There's one thing that you can stop doing that'll cure your attention problems forever and lift the brain fog that's been clouding your mind for years. But the first step to curing your ADHD symptoms is to recognize that you have a problem. I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, and I was in your position once too. But we can agree that needing to have some stimulation when you're brushing your teeth or eating food isn't normal, right? Your brain's kind of fried at that point. That's cooked, but that's how almost everyone lives. But the top 1% of people that don't live like that are the ones with that top 1% focus that lets them achieve what they can and what we can't. And achieving that top 1% focus is almost a prerequisite to finding success. Because almost everyone does this, and making it to the top 1% isn't even that hard, and all it takes is removing one habit. So if you're like everyone else, you wake up and you touch your phone before you even start thinking, and everyone does it, but no one questions what it's doing to their brain. And then you can't focus for the rest of the day and you wonder if you have ADHD. So this video is for people who feel like they have ADHD and might not be diagnosed, but even if you are diagnosed, this will still help. So for a bit of personal context, and you can probably relate to this a lot, I used to wake up and start scrolling reels every single day. I felt like my attention span was getting worse and worse every week, and I felt like I might have ADHD. This was still back in school, and I couldn't sit through a full class without staring out the window or going on my computer. I couldn't maintain focus for even an hour. When I was watching YouTube, I couldn't watch the whole video without skipping through or increasing the speed or maybe scrolling down to the comments for some additional dopamine. And even up to about a month ago, I couldn't even do mundane tasks like making food or eating or brushing my teeth or anything like this without having a video or a podcast or something playing. If you could relate to that at all, this exact video will help you, because understanding what I'm about to tell you fixed me and made me go from you to where I am now. So dopamine is a hormone that's released in our brain, and a lot of people misunderstand it. A lot of people think it's the pleasure hormone and it's the happiness and makes you feel good hormone, and it is technically, but the goal of dopamine isn't pleasure in your brain. Dopamine, think of it more like a motivation hormone. When your brain releases dopamine, it's basically telling your body and telling your brain to continue to do whatever action you're doing. And it's motivating your body to continue with it. So when you're performing an action like eating food, your pituitary gland, or whichever one it is that makes the hormones, floods your body, floods your blood with dopamine and convinces your body and pushes your body to continue to eat that food. Now, our dopamine baseline is basically the stable point at which our dopamine sits in our bodies. And everyone's is different, and you can affect it drastically based on what you're doing. So you could think of your dopamine baseline as the base level of motivation you have throughout the day for just doing any task. When you do something that increases your dopamine level, your dopamine baseline is here, and your dopamine shoots up for a little bit before coming back down to your baseline. Or at least that's how it's supposed to work. Now, more than 100 years ago, when we didn't have any of this technology or anything, humans would have achieved dopamine by doing good habits. So if you think back to even maybe the agricultural revolution, where a lot of humans were still hunting for food and some started to farm, doing that farming or doing that hunting would have released dopamine in their blood, and that was how most humans would have been chasing dopamine. Catching that deer or farming those crops and making enough food for their family to survive would have been what released that dopamine, and that would have motivated them to continue doing that action, to continue fighting and hunting for food. And along with that, things like socializing and communicating and companionship would have increased dopamine levels too, which is why humans were such a companion-based species, such a, culture, community-based species. And that was actually what pushed us to survive, this dopamine being released from companionship, because Neanderthals were bigger and stronger and smarter than us, but Homo sapiens beat them by being in groups because Neanderthals were very lone creatures. So we all exist now because of this dopamine being released at the right time, and obviously our ancestors lived day by day by having this dopamine released by catching and hunting food and stuff. And that was how dopamine was evolved to function, and that's how we were supposed to function. But today, with technology, with the rise of social media and things like this, our dopamine levels are absolutely wrecked. If you think back to that dopamine baseline, with the ancestors, they would run and fight and hunt for this food, which would have actually been a negative experience. It would have been stressful and painful, and so their dopamine would have gone down. But then once they caught that food, it would have gone up past the dopamine baseline, and over time this would have pushed the dopamine baseline higher and higher as it survived better and better. But today, when you go on your phone and you're scrolling social media, you're watching some short form bullshit, then your dopamine baseline is here, and you're here, and you skyrocket. You absolutely explode with dopamine the second you open that Reels tab. And then the second you close the Reels tab, your dopamine levels shoot down way past your baseline. And over time, this works your baseline lower and lower, which is why the average human today feels so lethargic and lazy and just overall feels like shit. And that's over long term. But if you think about your day-to-day life, if you open your phone, if you go on, these dopamine apps, the second you wake up, you're shooting your dopamine up the second you open your eyes, pretty much. And so your dopamine baseline gets set to about here at the start of the day, which is why when you shoot back down to here, you feel like shit, you feel horrible. And then when you do a task like working out, which still gives you dopamine, your dopamine goes up to here, but it's still not at the baseline that you set at the start of the day, and so you still feel bad even though you're doing a good action that should release dopamine. Because the amount of dopamine it releases doesn't compare to the short form content and the Instagram Reels and whatever you were watching at the start of the day. So your body's already set this baseline up here and you just feel like shit even when you're doing the good dopamine activities. And you've heard this before, but the social media apps are incredibly predatory. Facebook and Google and TikTok and whatever these companies are, they've got software developers working with human psychologists and stuff, basically trying to hijack your brain's dopamine receptors, because that's what makes them money, keeping you on the app and motivating your brain to continue scrolling Reels. And think about it, why do all these companies, all these apps, first of all, why are they all pushing for short form content? Why has YouTube made YouTube Shorts and Instagram made Instagram Reels after seeing how successful TikTok was? And why are even like adult websites making short form content, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous? But why is this all happening, first of all? And second of all, why do all these apps look the same? When you go on Instagram Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, why are all the buttons in the exact same places? Why do they all look basically the same? These companies have split test pixel level differences. Facebook did a split test where half the apps had the home button 2 pixels to the left and half the apps had the home button 2 pixels to the right. And they split tested that, and they're searching for the tiny 0.1% of difference in retention rate. And then when they find the one that works ever so slightly better, they make everyone have that. So these apps have been designed by billions and billions of dollars and thousands of smart people to be basically the perfect dopamine farm. They have been pixel engineered down to the finest little levels to maximize the amount of dopamine they extract out of your brain. And so these apps that are basically trying to extract as much dopamine as they can from your brain, when you go on them every single morning, you're basically maxing out the dopamine your body could possibly generate at the very, very start of the day, which wrecks the rest of it. Because something like that, the amount of dopamine you get from these apps, which have been engineered to extract dopamine out of you, no regular real life action is ever going to achieve that level of dopamine. And so the only fun thing in your day becomes scrolling these Reels and TikTok and whatever, and everything else that should be enjoyable just isn't anymore. So all the good habits that you should be doing feel hard and feel boring because your dopamine level is set to the very extreme, set to the very max at the start of the day when you go on your phone. At this point, your body's been releasing this dopamine daily for so long that your brain will start convincing you that it's a good thing to do this, because your entire body and your brain have been rewired to be motivated to scroll Reels and to eat junk food and to do whatever that releases too much dopamine, because it's the same thing with junk food. The chemicals they use are engineered to make you crave it more because of the dopamine it releases. So these companies and these software developers have hijacked your brain to convince itself to continue watching these Reels and continue to push for watching these Reels instead of doing the good habits like working out and eating clean. But now here's exactly how you re-hijack your brain back from these companies and back from your phone. The very first thing you need to do is to start shifting your routine. Start pushing back when you touch your phone by half an hour, then 45 minutes, and 1 hour every single day, progressively overloading it. It's a gym term. Basically, every time you go to the gym, every week you want to be increasing the weight you're lifting, and over time, that obviously increases the weight you're able to lift. It's the same thing with this. Every morning, you're going to touch your phone less and less. You're going to wait more before you touch your phone every day, and over 2 months or 3 months, you're not even touching it for the first, 5-6 hours of the day. And if you're completely, stuck in this, you want to keep your phone out of your room. Go plug it in the kitchen or on the dining table or something else at night. So when you wake up in the morning, you don't have the ability to scroll on it straight away. Because in that haze, in that half asleep, 5 seconds after you wake up, if you touch that phone, you're instantly spiking your dopamine, and your body is trying to find that phone to touch it to get that dopamine. You need to fight against your biology. You need to fight against your brain's programming, which is very difficult. So having your phone outside of your room and unable to touch it for the first, 5 minutes at least, until you get up, at least, should be your priority if you can't control yourself. And once you start pushing back how much you touch your phone, you want to be replacing that time with very mundane, very light tasks. For the first few days, it's going to be absolutely miserable, but if you were like me and you're used to, scrolling reels or listening to something while you're brushing your teeth, you're going to try to brush your teeth without looking at anything. Just look at your reflection in the bathroom mirror when you're brushing your teeth, when you're doing anything in the morning, when you're making your coffee, when you're doing all your tasks that you do in the morning. Do them silently without any sort of stimulation at all, and eventually you'll start realizing what I mean. That was it. That's the entire point of this video. That's all you have to do. You need to progressively overload how much time you're waiting before you touch your phone, and that's the only thing you need to fix that'll put you into the top 1% or even top 0.5, top 0.3% of focus in the world, just because of how bad society's gotten with these phones. So here's what you'll notice changing when you start doing this. Your focus is going to improve drastically. Not straight away. You're going to have maybe a week or so where you feel horrible, where you're craving this phone and you're, fighting against yourself and you're not able to focus at all because you're thinking about what you could be doing somewhere else. But over these weeks, over this first week, I'll say, give it 7 days and your focus is going to improve drastically. You're going to feel like you're opening your eyes for the first time. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. This brain fog you've got right now, this, lack of focus you have right now in your brain, you've had it for so long that you genuinely don't even realize it's there anymore. You're functioning with a disability. You've got a mental disability and you've had it for so long you don't even realize you have it. But once it's lifted off, you're never going to go back to it. You're never going to want to go back to it ever again. So at some point in your first week, you're going to have this sudden realization that you can concentrate and focus so much better, and your head feels clearer and quieter. You don't have all these voices and all this information going through your head at once. It's almost like your brain's emptier in a good way. Now, with the tasks you're doing, you're going to have a lot less irritation with the slow, boring tasks. If you're vacuuming or cleaning the dishes, you're not going to be craving that dopamine anymore, and you're going to start enjoying them more in a way. You'll have more presence day to day. You'll feel more conscious and more, in the moment, which you might not have experienced properly for years at this point. And that is why most people move around life and act almost like NPCs, like non-playable characters in a video game, because they've got so much brain fog, so much going on there in their head from all the stimulation, and they haven't ever tried to cut it all out. But once you do, you will feel like a different person completely. And the main benefit from this is all the boring tasks, all the painful, all the irritating tasks that you hated doing, studying, working out, eating clean, all of this stuff, you are going to start genuinely enjoying it. People say motivation's bad and you should work with discipline, but motivation's awesome. Motivation's good. If you are motivated to do something, it's going to be so much easier to consistently keep doing it. And this is how you get that motivation back. If you fix your dopamine baselines, you're going to genuinely want to do these actions. You're going to not force yourself or not find it easier to do them. You're going to want to do them. If you were given a free time slot where you could go to your phone and scroll on it, or go meal prep the next day's food, you're going to choose to meal prep out of the pure enjoyment you get out of doing it. It's genuinely life-changing. Every single one of your goals is going to come so much faster. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. I've been obese my whole life. I've been rotund, and no matter what diet I try and anything I try, I can't stick to it because it's so boring. But after implementing this, I've dropped about 11 kilos in the past 10 weeks, just because I genuinely find it fun to track everything and to, see the scale go down day by day. I'm genuinely enjoying it now. So it's easy. Here's my final points. This is free. This is genuinely free. It takes, honestly, less effort to do this than to not do it. Having your phone next to you and picking it up at the start of the day, burns more calories when you're lifting your arm to pick it up than not touching it. So it's free completely, and it's genuinely easier than not doing it. So it would be completely ridiculous to close this video and then not follow what I've said in it, because if you do it for 1 week, it'll genuinely change your life, and it's completely free, and it's the easiest thing you'll ever do, and it'll actually completely 180 your trajectory. Most people want to fix their attention with supplements or drugs or, life hacks like that. But this is genuinely all you need. All the issues you've had in your life with attention will genuinely go down by 99% if you just do this. Because the issue with almost every single attention problem you have starts in the first 5 minutes of the day when you spike your dopamine to the top. So to finish off, start this and just try it for 1 week. Just try not touching your phone in the morning for 1 week and see how genuinely different you feel, how life-changing it is. And once you try that, I promise you're never going to want to go back. And if you ever do, you're going to genuinely notice this drop in attention and this cloud and this noise in your brain after you spike your dopamine at the start of the day again, and you're going to want to go straight back to how you felt without the dopamine. So I really do hope this video helps you, because it has been one of the most life-changing things I've done in my life, and I really, really hope that you implement this too. If this video helped, I'm making more every day. I was Satchet, or I am still Satchet, and I'm making more every single day, so subscribe and I will see you tomorrow.